This episode of our This Week in XR podcast is sponsored by Zapper. Zapper is one of the world's leading XR companies. Over the past 12 years, they've won numerous awards for memorable campaigns. They've democratized AR by making tools and SDKs that anyone can use. And they created Zapbox, the world's most affordable mixed reality headset. Most recently, Zapper worked with Unilever to create an enhanced QR code called Accessible QR, which enables packaged goods to speak to the blind and partially sighted. If you're thinking XR, give the team at Zapper a call or visit zapper.com to see how they can help you on your XR journey. Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink with Ted Schilowitz. It's This Week in XR, Friday, August 9th, 2024. Good morning, Ted.
Morning, Charlie. So you're on the road this week and I'm home for a change, which is nice.
Yes, it's true. It's true. There's a family event here on the East Coast, and we're assembling in an Airbnb with all of our kids, and the grandchildren are coming, and I'm going to see my extended family. Everybody shows up for these things. Uh, as I said, I live my life going from event to event with these people.
Love it. Good.
So, kind of a slow news week. Again, it's the doldrums of the summer. We have Val Vacante as our guest.
Yeah,
You
I
and
love
Val
Val.
did a
She's a good friend.
fireside chat. She's a senior executive at Dentsu, working in their XR project. So I look forward to hearing what she's got up her sleeve at South by Southwest and what's going on at Dentsu Interactive.
Yeah, Val's
But
great. Dentsu's a really interesting company, kind of hidden from the U.S. culture, but she'll I'm sure illuminate on how important they are, how deeply rooted they are in many, many things. Kind of fascinating.
So let's talk about a couple of things that are a little bit adjacent, not exactly spot on the beat, although this one is super important.
Okay.
Google is a monopolist.
Yeah, what do you think? What's your 2 cents on this? Or two or
Well,
two
first of
billion
all,
cents on this?
first of all, I mean, it's about time that somebody started to look at big tech,
Hmm.
because I am of a mind that we would have a better economy and a more competitive tech sector if Instagram and YouTube and
We're all separate
AWS
entities. Yeah, yeah.
were all separate entities competing against one another to innovate.
Yeah. The argument
And
there is this is the baby bell strategy, right? So the AT&T
yeah, that horrible
monopoly,
strategy that created the internet.
right? Well, the baby bells, right? Suddenly it was like you have to split up this gigantic telephony company into regional companies that will live in various parts of the United States and have to live and die with their own customers and their own strategy. And so, and then you got all these different companies. And then, you got a wave of kind of what we learned from crypto. You got the pre-crypto when all these different companies got involved in telephonics at the time. And then they all kind of blew up and there was all these strange stories of corruption and things that were happening, and Lucent and Sprint and all these different things. There was a period of time we all kind of forget that, but it's
Yeah,
very mirroring of
true.
what's happening with crypto today.
But incredible the way they did have a monopoly. You couldn't call across the country during the day. It was,
Correct.
I was in LA. My wife was teaching in Chicago before we finally consolidated when I was just started working for Disney, and we spent $600 a month just on the phone, and it wasn't every day.
Yeah, and you didn't have a choice, right? So the internet, the waves of the internet that came from the breakup of the AT&T, among many other things, actually did bring that price threshold down to near zero over time, right? And technology sort of
Well,
took
it
over.
is zero
Yeah.
right now.
Basically,
Uh,
well, you're still
so
paying for some internet service, right? So it's not
right,
actually zero,
right,
but we can
right.
call, you and I can call our friends in China all day long and not see any blip in the radar in terms of our economic problems, right?
That was
So
those revenues were a very big part of the economy in
yeah,
the
they were massive,
60s and the
sure.
70s. And
Yeah.
those were the big tech giants of the day.
Well,
So
see if you
I don't
no,
know
go ahead.
whether we have the nerve or the kind of government that can control companies like this anymore. They're too big and
Yeah,
too powerful. I mean, what's the government going to do to Amazon? They'd wreck the economy if they fuck with Amazon.
correct. Well, and see if you agree with this thesis, which may or may not hold water, but I think about this a lot. I think Amazon as a company self broke up, except that they funnel everything down to one group of stockholders, because AWS and Amazon are effectively two different entities that live through two different societal benefits and societal profit zones. But they use each other as a lever, right? They use a profit and loss lever. AWS makes a tremendous amount of profit. Amazon makes a tiny little bit of profit, but does it at massive scale. So they're two very different size businesses. But because they sort of blend them together, they're able to play all these games with taxation and with all these interesting kind of like how they write off their profits and losses, right? Because they live blended, but they're actually separate. So if I was in the government, I'd say, look, if you're going to be separate businesses, you need to be separate businesses. You need to
I
report your
think
own P&L.
the benefit to Amazon shareholders would be huge.
Yeah.
So, well, let's just to put a button on this. We don't know what the penalty for being a monopolist is,
No,
right?
not
That's
yet.
got to be negotiated between the government and the company and approved by the judge.
Yeah.
And that took 5 years to negotiate with AT&T and another 5 years to implement. This one is so specific, having to do with Google buying distribution on other platforms, that the remedy may just be very simple. Google, you can't buy distribution anymore.
Right.
Other companies need that distribution to compete with you. Sorry.
Well, and Google's sort of stance on this, which I don't necessarily disagree with, is that it's still a competitive market. If the other big players wanted to buy into that space, if Microsoft, or others, or Yahoo back in the day wanted to do the same strategy and deploy it, they could have, and they
And
still
they
can
still
today.
they still
They
could,
still could.
although they're using Google's back end, so that'd be
Yes,
pretty
well, now
funny.
they've made their bed, right? So now they have to lie in it. But the
So
Apple Google relationship is so fascinating, how tied together they are, and very few consumers that touch any kind of browser, typically
right, well,
Safari on an iPhone.
people don't know that Safari is Google.
It's Google underneath the covers, right? Right. So, and I guess Microsoft could get into that game if they wanted to outbid them, but then it's like the NFL wars, right? It's kind of like who's going to take it on.
Here's the biggest irony of this. By the time Google and the Justice Department work this out, AI will have supplanted search, and it won't be that big of a deal. It's sort of like Microsoft and the desktop in the 90s. Everybody thought their monopoly on the desktop was going to choke off the internet. And that was true for a hot minute. And, within a couple of years, it was a completely moot point.
Yeah, so maybe that's Satya's end game is, I'm not going to worry about how the government wants to structure this. I'm going to structure my AI play with Sam Altman and friends to see if I can out Google. And certainly, it seems to be working, or at least they're fighting a good fight right now. So we'll see what happens.
So here's another good one, and we're wasting all our time on these general tech stories, but this one is so juicy, I just can't not say anything. X sues its former advertisers for not advertising.
I know. I was reading about this morning. It is, it's like you can't make this stuff up, right? It feels like the script of an Austin Powers movie.
This is Elon Musk punishing them by making them pay their lawyers. It's like, if you're not going to pay me, you're going to pay lawyers.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know why they think that's going to attract some kind of contrition from companies like Unilever and Mars, who have their own giant law firms. I mean, it's so, but he has a pattern of suing people he thinks are hurting X's business.
Yeah. Well, it's Dr. Evil, right? You can just see him.
Yeah. He sued Media Matters for publishing all the hate speech they found on X.
On X, right? Yeah.
And that's going to trial. So it's going to cost Media Matters, or it's a not-for-profit. It's donors. It's for all of its pro bono legal work, it's going to cost them millions of dollars to defend themselves in court against this ridiculous, non-existent crime of reporting what they found on the website. So it's kind of crazy. There's no court that's going to force, there is no conspiracy not to spend money.
Yeah. So Charlie, don't you think we should ask all of our listeners, should we try and cajole Mike Myers out of retirement to make the Elon Musk story, and Mike Myers has to play Elon Musk in all of its sanity, right?
Oh, I know, but Mike is a normal sized human being.
They can fix that with
somebody
AI.
really tall and freakish and kind of a megalocephaloid to play
You
Elon.
got AI for that. You got AI for that. It's got to be Mike Myers. It's got to be the guy who played
Oh
Dr.
man, that would be
Evil
too good.
plays
So
the
let's
real
hit a
Dr.
couple,
Evil.
but I don't want to keep Val waiting in the green room.
Wait, but you have to talk for a second about contextual, because
That's what I was going to bring
contextual,
up. $80 million. We're still talking this insane amount of money being thrown at AI. In
yeah.
this case, they're a company that makes tools for people who are building AI
So,
models. But the enormous, and there's been press for the past month. Oh, you're wasting your money. There's no return on investment. That the innovation cycle is too quick. You're going to build all this out. It'll be obsolete when you're done. And you've spent, $5-10 billion. So in the middle of all this, contextual AI raises 80 million. So I think that investors, at least venture investors, ain't too worried about that.
well, and it's a fascinating little story within a story, because now you have a company that's raising, significant amount of capital, certainly not billions, but significant amount of capital to sort of juice up the AI models, right? To kind of be a service layer to help this kind of hidden problem with AI be solved. So now you've got layers on top of layers of this technology, and people are already figuring out, well, you need
Well,
a
and
better tool set.
right, people love a picks and shovels play.
Hmm. Sure.
So here's a couple more we got to get through quickly.
Okay.
Meta shutters ready at dawn.
Yeah, well, yeah.
They bought the company that made Lone Echo and Echo Arena. Echo Arena was a big hit, but they couldn't figure out how to monetize it, so they finally shut it down.
Yeah.
And I guess eventually Ready at Dawn, although they've made many other successful PC titles, is no longer of use to Meta. And I think this story is important because what it shows is I think Meta is really pivoting. I don't think we're going to be seeing things like Grand Theft Auto. I think we're going to see more lifestyle fitness and education applications. I think we're going to see more mixed reality competition with the Vision Pro. I think that launch may not have had an impact on their device strategy, but I think it certainly influenced their software strategy.
Yeah. And I
So,
wouldn't say they're pivoting as much as they're sobering. I mean, this is stuff I've talked about for probably years on this podcast now, which is terrifying to say in and of itself, that they grew too big for their britches. They overshot what the market would actually be. They didn't understand the hit and miss ratio of anything related to entertainment. Gaming falls into that. And that the reality is that things don't last that long. Like, the hits are few and far between, the ones that really stick and hold in any medium. And, just trying to like buy it and continue to fund it when that's not the real business at large. Maybe someone got to all the execs and said, you're just literally spending too much money on this. And like a perfect example is our great podcast last week with the founder of Gorilla Tag is, to me, the future of this business. You're downsizing the business, you're trimming it up, more indie developers, more creativity, less reliance on graphics and graphics power, and kind of trying to make it look like PlayStation games. Lean into what really matters about virtual reality, and you will start to win. And you'll have to spend a whole lot less money doing it. And I think maybe finally it's starting to sink in. So I think it's interesting to me.
all right, last story.
Okay.
ByteDance introduces Jiming, its text to video generator.
Of course they did.
So,
So
I mean, it makes total sense, right? Because they want to continue to democratize content creation for TikTok.
sure.
So, and it's so funny, they got booted off of OpenAI last year for using it to train Jiming.
Yeah.
And so
And
Google, and so I'm sorry, Microsoft, in response to all this, makes a deal with TikTok to provide all of its infrastructure for
all the
AI.
services, right, right. Talk
So,
about
I
picks and
mean,
shovels, baby. Man, I mean, the money that's being spent just on, ones and zeros in the back room to run all this quote unquote entertainment is shocking. I mean, the dollars that are being spent that could go to other places for people to doom scroll on their phones, it's a shocking amount of money.
I mean, look, I mean, you should see, hey, Val, how are you?
Hey, good morning.
I was just completing a thought about text to video platforms, there are so many of them. It's like an invasion of locusts. I mean, I cannot imagine we're going to have 15 companies doing text to video, but here they are. So anyway, that's the end of our news segment. Val Vacante uh, with Dentsu Innovation, based in Austin, Texas. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I am so excited to be on the show. You all know I'm an avid listener, supporter. And Charlie, even in our emails together, you were like, "Hey, it's really cool because we're not standing sort of, around the snack table at CES or queued up for something at like AWE or, South by Southwest, insert event of choice where we all get
Yeah.
to visit each other." So I'm just excited to be here to have a chat with you guys today.
We're
You
excited to
are
have you.
you are long overdue for this podcast, and
Yeah.
I am thrilled to have you. So we'll fill in this important gap. So first, maybe we'll start with well, first of all, let's talk about South by Southwest because I saw you do a talk almost every year, and you did a fireside chat with Ted, which was terrific. I think 2 years ago. So tell us about your South by Southwest experiences and why you do this every year, and what you're gonna hopefully get to do next spring.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, of course, I am based in Austin, and what not better group to support, here locally is South by Southwest. So, for years now, I mean, it's been over half a decade for sure, not quite a decade. But in terms of being on the South by Southwest Innovation Board, also South by Southwest Pitch, which you did a great job on that, Charlie, 2 years ago. And so I do a lot of sort of, volunteer support work there with South by. So it's near and dear. And then, of course, when it comes to the talks and it comes to sort of curating the sessions, I'm excited to be able to team up with just some of the brilliant pioneers in the space. Hence, Ted and I doing the
Mhm.
talk 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, together. And it's just really exciting for me in the work that I do in my everyday, creating new products or productized services, and teaming up with people in the space who are doing, equally cool stuff and shaping the future. I mean, Ted is a futurist, like by trade. So,
Well, the three of us are. I mean,
yes.
and the three of us have had a barbecue in Austin, right? So once you barbecue in Austin together, you're linked together for life. Like you can't undo that, right? So
So
Val and I
I
have had
have
many good times together over the years.
I have a decade of South by Southwest under my belt, and I think I've spoken 11 times because
Mm.
some years I doubled up as a moderator for two different panels. And I love it. But, and by the way, I mean, it's been great for my book business. It's been great for my consulting business. I see so many friends that I wouldn't otherwise have a chance to spend time with. So I love that, but I'm exhausted. I'm freaking exhausted just thinking about it. And last year, I found myself, but first of all, we did a terrific featured panel with Roni on the Apple Vision Pro. We had Joanna Popper with us, and it
Yeah,
was
Val
just
was there. She was in the audience.
yeah. We
I
were
was
doing.
in the front row.
She's in
Oh,
the
you
audience.
I
were.
didn't
It was
catch the
so.
shirt, but I was close.
It was the podcast live, so that was a lot of fun. So there's so many social events, and I love going to those. But honestly, I don't have a good back. I get tired more easily. I'm
Okay,
standing
Charlie.
there.
All right, all right. Charlie, it's only
I don't know.
August. You,
I
you
don't
got
know.
you got
So
from August till
that
March
said,
to fit yourself up. You'll be
that
fine.
said, I've been talking to Blake about a panel too. So
You'll be fine, Charlie. It's just August. You got 4 months.
it's not a panel picker. It's something else. So Val, tell us about your submission for this year,
Yeah, absolutely.
or
So,
proposal, I should say.
sure. I have a couple of them spanning different tracks. So there's one on the AI track, and that one is really exciting because we have it's called AI's next wave of creativity, conversations, and convenience. Oh, sorry, got some background music there. Um, but that one we're really excited about. It's I'll be moderating it and sort of leading the discussion. And it's going to feature Chris Down, the Chief Design Officer from Mattel.
Mm.
And also it's going to have Matthew Lorraine, who is from Google as
Love
well.
that guy.
And then we're also going to have Scott Belsky, who's the chief product officer over at Adobe. So really having those brilliant minds, you know, from your Google,
Great
your
panel.
Adobe, and then actually, you know, from Chris's perspective, the practice of it. And then of course at Dentsu, you know, some of our key partners are Adobe, Google, Microsoft. So we're always fortunate that we get first looks and get to experiment with a lot of the new
Great.
stuff.
We should back up a step like we always do. Now we're on fourth base of a baseball game if there was a fourth base, and we got to go back to first base. So we need to learn a little bit about Dentsu. But before we do that, just because you're mentioning your sessions at South by and Charlie, so we've got one in the running too. Charlie, I might have to be a guest just on the podcast as well as a co-host to explain this one because it's how Hollywood can potentially tackle healthcare and help healthcare. So that's in the running. It will take some time to explain it, so we don't want to take away.
Idea.
We don't want to take away from Val's time. We'll table it for another day. But Val, tell us, what is Dentsu? Who is Dentsu? I know it well because you and I spent a lot of time together, but I guarantee you a lot of our listeners don't know this company, how important it is, how embedded it is in so many things, and you know a little bit of its history.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dentsu, you know, when people talk about innovation, you know, sometimes it's just like it's like a punctuation mark. What I'm excited about Dentsu is we have this. Dentsu is over 120 years old. I think all of us have kind of been in the business for a long time, as I said, with innovation being just like a punctuation mark. And what, again, I get excited about Dentsu is like, we've been doing this for so long. And we are a global company, as I mentioned, based in Japan. And I get excited about collaborating, you know, in one project, I might be working with a team in India, Brazil, UK, Australia, you know, and we're doing a thing, right? And then, or working with folks in Canada and here in the US, just kind of having the best people and the best projects. Yeah, so it's a little bit about
So as you
Dentsu.
were talking, I asked my AI friend if it could tell me what Dentsu's first business was. So founded in 1901, so like you said, it's over 120 years old, selling newspaper ads. That was their very first business. So effectively, they started out as a you couldn't call it that at the time, but a public relations company. They were starting to put things into the media sphere, right, of the time, which was newspapers. And then they continued to evolve it. And it sounds like from what you're describing, I mean, I've seen what Dentsu does is very tech forward, tech focused thing, right? You had me on stage wearing all these sensors for like dealing with medical sort of patients and things. So it's kind of amazing how many things they touch from the essence of starting with like placing ads in newspapers of the time in Japan.
Right.
Do you want to call out a couple of like projects that people would be interested in, things that Dentsu has done recently, or like, oh, I didn't realize that was Dentsu behind that? Like, would that be something you want?
One of the things I actually wanted to highlight, since you guys got to experience yourself when we saw each other at South by, was it's actually part of our intelligent messaging product and productized service that we teamed up with Meta on. So, and what you all were able to experience was the William Grant and Sons Glenfiddich guide, if you all remember sitting around the table. And it's like, you know, like, hey, tell me about malt.
Yeah,
And
Scotch. So you were deep into the Scotch world. Just Scotch meets technology, kind of old school meets new school sort of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And that was really exciting because, you know, a lot of people are, you know, again, AI this, AI that. And what we were excited about that project was the fact that we created a multimodal experience. So you know, where you could say, tell me about malt, and it would pull their information up. But also you could snap a photo of the bottle and it will pull up sort of recommended recipes, all sort of brand approved, and have the ability to always add to it. And with that one, it was exciting, of course, teaming up with Meta. I mean, they're a phenomenal partner.
So for the small group of people that are watching this video on YouTube and not listening to it, Val just put on her Ray-Ban stories. Do they still call them stories? I
No,
guess so.
they're
What do
just
they call them now? What are they?
Ray-Bans.
Just Ray-Ban.
Ray-Bans.
Not okay. Well, the smart Ray-Bans that have cameras and audio.
Yes.
So she just put them on, and go ahead, Val. Keep talking. She's got her glasses on now.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so what we're excited about, well, one, for intelligent messaging, just to back up for a moment, we created intelligent messaging really to kind of accelerate those one-to-one conversations. And so as we touched with Dentsu being media, we teamed up with Meta and created, there's click to message ads. So if you're already buying media in the space, on Meta outlets, you can actually click the message and launch a bot-based experience.
Actually,
You could see, yeah, right. You could see going to ChatGPT and saying, what do I buy my wife for Christmas? I think she has already bought herself everything she wants. And then it would say, well, did you think of this? Did you think of a gift certificate? Did you think of flowers or whatever, right? And like guys, when they have to buy something, as you probably know from personal experience, we're like deer in the headlight. We need some freaking help.
Well, you know what I noticed is a business that does that. I don't know if they data mine. Maybe they should, even ethically. Maybe they shouldn't. It's an interesting question for the three of us. Is when you get an evite for a party, like I have a party to go to for a friend this weekend, and the evite comes, and you say yes, I'm going, and then it send you a reply saying, okay, good, you're registered, you're RSVP'd. And at the bottom, there are links. And guess what those links are? Would you like to buy a present for your friend,
Yes.
Bob? And it's Amazon, Target, Walmart. And if you click on one of those, it can, it's like the modern wedding registry, right? Except it's just for every
Right.
party. The question, Val, maybe you know the answer to this. The question is, are they being smart about it and actually like using AI or using some machine learning? If Charlie invited me to his party and it would like, okay, you're clicking on this. We know Charlie, we see his platform. He's got stuff on the internet. I'll bet you he would like this, right? Because Charlie's wearing a shirt from a famous circus from 100 years ago, right? So if it did object recognition, it might notice that you're wearing that shirt and suggest things of that era or that time that we could buy you a little like a little mini carousel or something, or a ceramic elephant from the circus. Is it that smart, Val, or am I over anticipating what the future will be?
Well, I think you're on point of what the future will be. So we've seen bits of that in the fashion industry. I would say over the past 5 to 10 years, but almost just very tactical, right? It's sort of like a one-off thing. Whereas I think where you're talking about and really connecting those experiences, I think that's where the excitement is.
Yeah, it's interesting.
In terms of retail, I do think, creating experiences and like not just a transaction, but you go for an experience, or is it, I was recently in Japan and it's like an experience. People are like, they're putting the makeup on people and you're trying things on, and it's, you can go do something there that you can't do otherwise. And so I think those kind of like, I know the word retailtainment it pops in and out of our vernacular, it seems like over the last 10 years. But I think it's back to really for retailers to differentiate beyond, the transaction. I wanted to add too, regarding your point on entertainment, to answer your question, I think we have to evolve all of these experiences. You guys probably saw this week with Roblox and Beetlejuice and Fandango,
Yep.
right? So, having those watchable moments. I mean, it's still going to be in the box office, right? But having that extended experience, I think everybody's going to have to be open to these extended and connected experiences.
These are what we call the triple M, modern marketing metaphor, right? So Roblox is a triple M, and people are using it to tap into a culture, to tap into the fact that kids are there by the many, many millions at any given time, and they're not watching TV, and they're not flipping through on the other kind of media, and they're not really on the traditional internet anymore. They spend the bulk of their time in these gaming environments. It's kind of one of the, maybe it should be 4Ms, because it's one of the purest, truest uses of that overused word metaverse, is that in that metaverse, it's a more important advertising vehicle by order of magnitude than any other version of the metaverse, right? Because that's where kids are and they're socializing and they're talking about stuff. So if you can get them there, you have a chance to monetize on them, or at least on their parents, right? So it's interesting. Very
Well,
interesting.
and another to your earlier question, like, you know, with brands and changing things up, one of the things I'm excited about, kind of going back to our South by point earlier, is one of the sessions that we're going to be doing is excuse me, pixels to reality. So how gaming is transforming our world. It's, you know, a topic that always evolves and comes up. And with that one, we're going to have folks from Roblox, Fortnite, and also Galderma.
So what is in your opinion, which project have you had the most fun working on?
Good question.
Oh, Charlie.
If you don't have one, Val, I could give you one because I know you had fun with it. But I'll wait for you.
You can chime in. I have fun with all of the innovation work that I do. It's a pain and then it's a reward, as with making anything.
So this relates to your VR world, which I think you'll know where I'm going with this. So Dentsu has a demonstration, and I think they're trying to commercialize it in various ways, where they can give you virtual hugs, which ties into my healthcare thing, by the way. And it's a suit, like a vest that you put on that has all these like advanced pneumatics, and you wear a VR headset.
It's like a thunder jacket for your dog.
Yes, exactly. Except it's for humans.
A hug.
And Val could be in VR, doesn't need the thing, but can just give me a hug with my avatar in VR. And if I'm wearing this thing, it will compress on me and give a hug. And now I don't want to tell you too much, Val. It's your thing. Now I gave you the setup. Tell about why it's so special.
Yeah, well, and I will say it's called hugtics instead of haptics. So right, clever nameplay there. Now I will say, unfortunately, I didn't get to work on that project, but our team in Japan, actually, our Dentsu Labs team, they're the ones who sort of created it. But what's really, really exciting about that, and it is one I really enjoy. I mean, who doesn't love hugs, first of all? But one of the things that the team in Japan did is they actually created a way where it would memorize a hug. So if it was a hug that you had with your mom or your wife or your sister, brother, etc., and they experienced it, could actually memorize it, and you could have that same hug.
Same hug again. Wow. That's cool.
That's a good way to end the show, with a hug.
With a hug, a virtual hug.
Val, it was so good to see you.
Virtual hugs.
It was so good to see you. Thanks for coming on the show. And thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you for having me, guys. Take care.
See you next week.